Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back. Brandon again. Today I want to talk about 3 simple tips to make sure you have a good meet. Powerlifting meet, that is, of course. Of course. So for this, you guys probably just got done watching my 12-week chronicle of training, peaking, and competing in the 2015 RPS New England Revolution. And as part of that, or as part of my normal content, which besides penis jokes, seems to be powerlifting and strength training, I get a lot of comments from you guys saying that you're interested in doing a powerlifting competition, or they've already gone up and signed for one and you just really want to know some advice. So that's what I'm going to do this video. 3 simple tips to make sure you have a better meet. And you don't even have to take any pills. I know, that's impressive. So tip number 1 is all about openers. This is probably the most important thing I can tell you, is set your openers appropriately. Now, every single competition I've been to, someone has bombed out in the very first lift. So the first lift is squats, and bombing out means that you fail all 3 attempts on any particular lift. Now, squats is most likely to be the culprit because, again, it's the first actual exercise. And if you have very bad openers and bad lift selections, chances are, not only in bench and deadlift, you're going to get nailed in squats since they come first. Although I have seen people bomb out in bench and deadlift before. Now, this is going to lead to a very bad time. Why? Because you probably just spent a lot of time preparing for this meet in terms of your training cycles. You probably had to pay an entry fee anywhere from $50 to upwards of $150 for the ones that I've been a part of. Not to mention, if this is your first meet, you probably just sprung for a nice, fancy spandex singlet. And chances are you won't get much use of that singlet outside of competition, unless it's the bedroom and you're into that kind of thing, in which case, bravo, young sir, bravo. And then you have to deal with people asking you how your competition went, and you have to tell them you failed out on the first exercise and you were disqualified. And one of the things that you might not know about competition is you can't go down in weight. So if you set your opener at, let's say, 500 pounds, which is around your 1 rep max, and for one reason or another you don't hit that first attempt, you can't say, oh, my bad, that was a little heavy, let's go down to 450. It doesn't work that way. You either have to attempt 500 again or go heavier, which I have seen people go heavier on missed attempts, and no surprise, they usually don't hit those heavier attempts either. And again, you're going to have a bad time. Now, despite the fact that you could bomb out, there's some other negative issues with going too heavy on your openers. Now, for me personally, this could really play a mental role in the fact that if I choose something that ends up being a grinder on my first attempt, I'm going to start thinking, all right, I have 2 more attempts, but that first one was really, really heavy. I'll probably be a little bit more conservative in where I jump my second and third attempt and really worry about potentially failing my second attempt and failing my third. So it really sets you up for failure in that regards, in my opinion, as opposed to setting an opener that you can smoke, meaning the weight moves really fast. Feel pretty good. That was easy. That was light. I'm going to kill it. Let's increase the weight a lot. I feel good about myself. So it's really about building that positive momentum. Now, a good rule of thumb to take into play is make sure that your openers is something that you could hit for an easy triple. If you don't know what that means, think roughly around 90% of whatever your current 1 rep max is. So this is something that's going to move fast, and even if it's your shittiest day, you should still be able to hit it. And not in a Chris Brown sense, if you know what I'm saying. So make sure your openers are on point. And I think a big problem is people who go into a meet for the first time, they think that each attempt should either be at their 1 rep max or going for a new personal best, when in reality, that first attempt should just be to make sure that you can in fact finish the competition. So again, around 90%, make sure you do your squats, you do your bench, you do your deads, you get your nice little fancy trophy at the end of the day. Everyone is happy. Worry about going heavier in your second and third attempts, and again, building that positive momentum. And we can actually talk about that in a whole separate video as far as selection of your second and third attempts go. So plan your openers accordingly. Now, the second tip I want to give you, there's many tips I want to give you, but let's talk about powerlifting again, is make sure you read the rules of the federation that you're competing in. So if you haven't competed in a powerlifting meet before, which if you're watching a tip video on some basic advice, I'm assuming you haven't, the competition lifts are performed a little bit differently than you might be used to in the gym, meaning that for each lift, a judge is going to give you certain commands. In the squat, for most often cases, it's going to be a squat command and a rack command. For a bench, you're typically dealing with a start, press, and rack command. And for deadlifts, usually just down. Deadlifts are, for the most part, the easier lift in terms of commands. Now, that might not necessarily seem too tough, those rules I just gave you, but if you're used to training a certain way, so maybe just unracking the bar, doing a repetition, and racking it, it's very tough to break habits that you're used to. So for me, for example, my first powerlifting competition I was during the bench press, I did my rep fine, and as soon as I was done, I went to rack the bar because that's what I was used to doing in training. You finish your rep, you rack the bar. However, I did it a little bit prematurely, which some might say I have the problem of doing that in other aspects as well. It's another story, maybe another video. But despite the fact that the lift was actually good, because I didn't listen to the judge's commands, I got red lighted. So that's never good either. So you don't want to get disqualified from a lift in a competition, and you don't want to get disqualified because you did the lift, but you didn't listen to the rules. Now, the rule book from any federation that you compete in is going to be available online. You can look exactly what it is. Typically, they'll go over that in the rules meeting as well as any other types of equipment or things that you should be aware of. And it's important to know these things, in my opinion, in advance, because you don't want to go to the meet on the day of the competition and be surprised. You don't want any surprises when you're talking about your meet. So make sure that you do, in fact, know the rules of the federation you're competing in. So the third tip I want to talk about is pretty simple, but it's very important as well, and that is in regards to nutrition. So if you've never been to a powerlifting meet before, I would very highly suggest you go even just to watch one. First of all, that'll help you with the tip we just talked about in terms of rules, regulation, and how things are run, but also so you get an idea of how long these things can take. So in some cases, they take half a day. In other cases, they might take the full day, depending on the actual federation you're competing in, depending on how many lifters are there. You'll find that you have a good amount of time, not only between each actual attempt, but between each actual exercise. So there might be an hour between from when you squat to when you bench, and from when you bench to when you deadlift. That being said too, a lot of times people are concerned with their weight going into a competition. They might be just on the edge, so they didn't really eat a lot the night before. They haven't really ate that morning. You want to make sure that you have the energy in order to compete. So what I really suggest you do is you bring food, you also bring some drinks that have calories in them, whether it be Gatorade, whatever it is, just something to ensure that you're going to have a constant flow of energy throughout the day. That way you can perform at the top level possible. Now, sometimes these meets you go to will have food available for you, but I don't really like to rely on that. Again, as I mentioned already, you don't want to be surprised come meet day, or you're going to have a bad meet. And let's be honest, nobody likes bad meat. Put that on a shirt. So those are 3 simple tips that I found to be really helpful if you're looking into doing a meet. Again, set your openers appropriately. Make sure you know the rules of all the competition lifts as well as the federation in general. And make sure you bring some food because you're gonna get hungry. As always, everybody, thanks so much for watching. In the meantime, stay big.